Why are you here?
I'm looking for a great warrior.
So what kind of warrior have you been?
The way of the warrior.
He needed a warrior's mind.
Clearly, this was all planned by warriors of...
Warriors. Now is the time.
Hi, this is Michelle Crawford, and you're listening to the Warrior of Impact podcast. I am a warrior of cannabis.
Oh, all right. And we are live. This is the Warrior of Impact podcast, and we are joined today by a very special guest, as all of our guests are very special. But today, I'm just really excited about this. Today is April the 20th, 420. So for all of our friends who partake in the day for what it is societally known as the day where everybody gets to enjoy legally, we'll do that little asterisk, the legality of cannabis. We are joined by a certified cannabis coach and founder of Canna-Curious Coaching, Michelle Crawford. As a cannabis coach, Michelle has become a trusted authority on all things healing from the place of cannabis. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is really just getting into that idea of using cannabis in the healthy format for a lifestyle. Michelle also teaches some DIY practices for creating your own home tinctures. And then, of course, how could you not be excited about the fact that she does talk about increasing better sex by the use of cannabis. This is going to be an awesome episode, so make sure you guys stick around for this one. So without further ado, let's go ahead and introduce our guest today, Michelle Crawford.
Hi, Michael. Hi, Shannon. I'm so glad to be here with you today. This is exciting for me.
This is very exciting. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you, your backstory, what got you into cannabis? Just give us your, 10,000 foot, explanation, and we'll just dive into this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yeah. Hi, I'm Michelle Crawford. I am a certified cannabis health coach. I went to Cannabis Coaching Institute for 6 months to become a certified cannabis health coach. And it's pretty funny to have invested so much time and energy. That's not even all of the cannabis education I've gotten in my life so far. But in 2014-15 time, I read a Vice article called How I Got My Pussy Stoned with Weed Lube. I mean, that's the name of the article. It really clickbaited me. I got hooked, you guys. I'm a wife and a mom, and I've been married. Yesterday was my wedding anniversary, April, and I've been married 24 years. So, having a healthy marriage for that long, it does take attention to all the parts. So, for example, that one. And I would try to get my medical card here in California, where I live. It was legal at that time to get a medical card and to go to a dispensary and buy a weed lubricant product called Foria. And my husband and I tried that together, and we had a really great time with it. We really enjoyed it. We made it a part of our sex lives. And in doing so, I realized some other health benefits from cannabis. Like many people, I was in it for the sort of recreation of it all. Like you could call, obviously, just sex is a bit of a recreation in some ways. Although now I also think of it as very divine in other ways. And you know what's so funny? I actually started to feel better bladder health. And it was inextricably linked. And when that happens to you, when you stop getting urinary tract infections chronically, and things are going really well with your kind of after having 3 children incontinence, it makes an impression. And you're thinking, is cannabis doing this for me? I have to find out more. And so I did. And years down the road, here I am. So that's a little bit of the backstory of that all. Canna-Curious Coaching is so exciting. After I went to the Cannabis Coaching Institute and got my certification in cannabis health coaching, I was so inspired to start my business. Women in my family really love to run businesses, I think. And putting my hand to this incredible, exciting industry has been a hugely refining of my personality and myself and my values adventure that I welcome at this time in my life. I'm 46 now, and I just am so excited to take on helping people learn more about how to fit cannabis into their lifestyle for their health goals, and especially helping women to connect to better health and better sexual vitality and better spirituality through cannabis. It's a huge part of my business. And the more I do it, the more I enjoy it. And the more connections I make, like you guys, and the more I'm able to get the word out, the more exciting it all becomes. I really think that for everybody, trying their own business is something, I think, Michael, you would agree, is something that is worth doing, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I think that it's the double down of the passion. Like if you find something that you love, you're passionate about, it's how you take that to the next level. Like I take things to a little bit of an extreme. Like I don't tend to always have hobbies. Like hobbies become the next venture for me, but that's just how I'm built. And I'm okay with that. And I lean into that a bit more, but I do think that everybody should have some business. A, there's a tax benefit. B, there is a fulfillment of being able to have something that you get to build. So I completely agree.
When you're an entrepreneur, I think especially for women, it gives you so much empowerment. And I know, Michelle, from just what you've said, that you're all about empowering women. So it seems natural to me that you would be a business owner.
Thank you so much. I am all about empowerment. It's funny you should mention that. I was preparing for this podcast, kind of looking over some of my mission statements, because knowing I'm going to have to talk about my business. And one of the things I did my business plan legitimately with my cousin who runs a boutique agency out of Arizona. She was so excited. She'd already done work with other business operations people in cannabis, and she knew what a rising industry it is, right? So it was exciting to work with me in the space of coaching. And I decided at that time that the values of my business would be, Shannon, education, empowerment, and excellence. So I'm looking to, educate the inspired cannabis DIYer, the woman who wants to improve her health, not just hers. The women that come to me that are in my classes are really not just trying to improve their own health, but that of their families. They typically are about my age and are trying to raise like older children, as well as aging parents. Not raise, take care of, These are women that are like healing kitchen witches. They really care and they believe in hearth and home being the source of nurturing and goodness. And so I love working with these women because I know the good that they are doing in their communities and in their families. And that education, the empowerment, and the excellence that comes from it, I'm dedicated to it 100%.
Awesome. Now, one of the things that I think is fascinating is when we have an experience in our lives that does touch on us in that profound way, that it's like a chance encounter, which we can go into the spiritual realm and say that's no such thing as a chance encounter, right? Like you were always meant to read that article, and play guinea pig to your own, desires. And then from that, you get knowledge and like a true, savant of like compassion, you're drawn to then share that knowledge. To me, that's a very warrior path of like purpose. Now, in speaking about that, what does that time frame look like? Like, you read this article and I certainly would click on that type of article too. I think that it makes sense, right? Because I think it's, I'm all about bringing the taboo to light, because I think that the things that were once taboo are the things that really we should be talking about, because those are the things that allow us to express ourselves and really live into our true identity. And sexual health is certainly one of those. The idea that it is 2022 and we still got to like hush a little bit about the fact that we're smoking this magic plant is a little ridiculous. Obviously in North Carolina, it is very, very much illegal, although we're slowly getting the process of decriminalization going. But I think all of these things are conversations that should be happening out in the open. And so just take us through that kind of like step of like reading the article and what gave you that gusto to be like, well, I'm going to just try this now.
I'm just going to try. Well, speaking of that warrior spirit, coming onto this podcast, knowing that you're the Warrior of Impact podcast, like got me thinking about warrior spirit in my life. And I really boiled it down to this concept of taking action, and the intention behind your action is usually to be protective or to be providing, of your community, yourself, your family, that kind of thing. That's sort of like the basic concept that really rang true for me. And so when you say, what about this article made you take action and go forward and make steps, and then keep taking action? I did get hooked in. Sexual health is an important part of my makeup. If you guys have ever heard of that 5 love languages thing you can do, It's amazing. Everybody should do it. And I did mine, and if you know there's 5 of them and you get like these points and they basically tell you like which ones you got. Mine was like all my eggs were in the physical basket, basically. Like I'm a physical lover. If you and I were in the same room, I'd probably be like holding your hand and, leaning over, that kind of thing. Yeah. So, and my happiest times in life are like when me and my sons and my family, my husband are all like watching a movie, cuddled up on the couch or something, laying around in one room. I just feel like wonderful at those times. But if I walk you through, like that was what got me into it. Like that's like a part of my personality that made me click that article, right? And then, because I care about that so much. But from 2015 to 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22 right now, right? Like what was all that? Here in California, we had a long-standing medical program, and that was hugely important and impactful, speaking of, to my journey, because by the time I tried the medical program and wanted to go to the dispensary and buy things, it was almost like recreational. Like anybody could get a medical card practically. Like you just had to go to these like medical card establishments that basically sold you a medical card. It wasn't hard. I know it's much harder in other states now who are just starting medical programs, are very stringent, and I mean that you can only apply with certain problems, illnesses that qualify for being qualified for cannabis medicine in other states. That's not what California was like at that time. And then just a year later, the voters approved Prop 64 for recreational adult use. And that changed the game a lot, not only did it increase like cannabis, industry here in California, change the face of it. Whatchamacallit, hospitality became even more booming than it was before because cannabis is such an important part of the heritage of Northern and Southern California, as well as, like in the world, this is the epicenter of good breeding practices, genetics, everything that has to do with cannabis comes from Northern California and spreads to the world. So I was always really proud. My journey included a lot of like just exploring cannabis here in Northern California, which is its own unique, you're in North Carolina, you don't have this, you know what I mean? You can't go to San Francisco and visit the most longstanding medical and recreational clubs in the country, practically, I know Colorado became recreational legal before California, but we had medical before them. So it's like, and a lot of these places have both. So you can go to places here and buy, the most incredible cannabis in the world, try different things that are so innovative because this market is incredibly mature and in a totally immature industry. This is one of the most mature markets. And you know what I did? I spent most of my time buying like flowers and concentrates, learning about how those things are produced, grown and produced, and making my own DIY stuff at home because it is kind of expensive. That product that I really wanted to try at the dispensary was like $80 for like 2 ounces. It was so expensive. And I used it up like easily, we were generous with ourselves. We weren't stingy with it. So, So learning how to DIY my own products became a big deal. And my husband started to see how much usefulness was coming from all of our cannabis lotions and weed lubes and different tinctures and things I was making over the years. And he started to become interested in being a cannabis gardener. So we have a little joke here at home that he's the grower of the plants and I'm the blower of the plants.
Grower in the Gotcha.
We developed a cannabis lifestyle between us over those years of me DIYing, learning about the industry, because all the products that I was trying and loving were commercial products here in this state. So I was trying to figure out how do they make these commercial products? And it was a bit of a mystery because everything about cannabis is a stigmatized mystery. And it doesn't need to be. It's a very simple and awesome sacred plant. But yeah, trying to figure out how everything was made, trying to figure out how to make it myself. And then my husband and I learning how to garden over the last like few years brought our cannabis lifestyle into this like Martha Stewart level, like where we have gardens, we grow, we invite friends over, we taste test, we go to like the most important festivals in the world, which are also happen to be here in Northern California, the Emerald Cup, and see the industry in its glory. So it's an amazing amount of experience that I've accumulated by, I would say, luck of location and timing. And also my interest in DIYing. And I didn't mention that I'm Filipino and have a giant family. And one of my major things, it was getting my parents who are like arthritic, have sleeping issues, just like me, like that kind of thing, to take cannabis. Like a lot of women, like I mentioned before, in the sandwich between older kids and aging parents taking care of both sides of their family. Me too, same. And I was really trying on an all out like campaign to get my family to take stuff. And I know a lot of people probably understand this, but they also don't because of my work at Cannabis Coaching Institute. I know that some people have a really hard time being open with other people about cannabis use still today because it is mixed, the stigma and the legality is mixed and people's attitudes are still mixed. And so being brave enough, warrior spirit comes up again to just continue to beat that drum for my family until they accepted me and to not take it hard when they didn't want to for years.
It's interesting. It's interesting that you talk about two things that have a lot of stigma, but you do it so confidently. And that is sex and then marijuana. And I just find it so interesting that those two things you're so confident about. You're not scared to talk about it. You're not scared to make it part of your business. And I think that's awesome.
Thank you. I didn't think those things were, I know those things are stigmatized, but I care about them on such a deep level that if you and I were to hang out, Shannon, you would be so tired of me talking about cannabis and, and sexual health to you. You'd be like, I already told you I masturbated 2 days ago and had a wonderful orgasm, Michelle. I'm fine. Like, leave me alone.
Well, talking about empowerment, right? I think when women have a satisfaction on a sexual level, they're so much more confident. They're so much more empowered. They feel so much stronger when they have that acceptance of their partner to be able to explore and satisfy their sexual side of their life. And going back to your message and your mission statement is empowerment. And so I think it's something that we don't talk about enough is how much the sexual part of our life plays into every other aspect.
I couldn't agree more. And I told you that for me, it's a big honking deal. Like, if I don't have that as that need fulfilled, it does diminish my confidence quite a bit. Like, I'm not a happy camper. Like, you need the love that you need. And that's what I need. And it's like, and everybody does, we have those jokes where people say, oh, they need to get some, like that person is too angry, too stressed. We question their love lives as a joke, but it's true. We need that connection to ourselves, to that ecstasy is necessary. I'm reading a book with that title and it is so true. And you think about all the ways that we experience ecstasy. Sexually is the most common way. But when was the last time you had like a giggle-gasm where you just couldn't stop laughing because something was so funny? Like the ways that we experience bliss and joy, cannabis is one of them. And I think that's why it's so tied into this message for me, is because THC is a euphoriant. It gives you joy, the feeling of joy. And we need that so much. So we call it getting high for a reason. It's elevated. It's good for us. You know what I mean? I don't know why I am very confident about talking about this. And it can be polarizing, but I think it depends. If you're the kind of person who just is waiting to hear this from somebody, you're not feeling polarized. You're feeling attracted. Like, right?
One of the things that I've always, so we've obviously, known each other now for a little bit, worked, kind of some behind the scenes stuff together for a couple of months. And one of the things that I always find fascinating is that you're very deliberate in using the word cannabis.
Oh, yeah.
I find that fascinating because like when doing some research with you, cannabis, the plant has so many, utilizations versus baseline saying like, oh, well, I'm a coach that helps people with weed or helps people with marijuana or helps people get high. Like there's so many different components of that because a bulk of which, conversations that we've had, a bulk of the benefits behind cannabis have very little to do with even getting high. Like the CBD
Totally.
aspect of it that is become a little bit more mainstream. But even with that, it's so unregulated that it's just kind of like, it's easier to get really shitty CBD and then ruin the experience. But I think that I'm fascinated by the fact that you are so determined to like the words that you use. And that was a couple of weeks ago, we had a warrior of words on. She was somebody who was just really nailed in the importance of our words. And I just want to like recognize that because I think that it's very deliberate, but it speaks to your intention of, I'm a cannabis coach. We're going to talk about educating about cannabis. And yes, marijuana in the traditional sense is that. But one of the things that I thought was kind of cool, like the difference between cannabis and weed is really a legal classification. It has nothing to do with a breed or a strain. It's marijuana is kind of like the equivalent of like a slang word for the same plant. And I just think that is so cool because it just feeds into your intention and the way that we perceive.
And do you think, Michelle, that people take you more seriously when you say cannabis rather than marijuana? Do you think that kind of elevates your message?
Probably it does. Yeah, I think it does because it is the right term. I am so pedantic, you guys, I care about this a lot. And I will use the words marijuana and hemp just to make people feel comfortable. Of course, weed. I don't mind saying weed, pot, ganja, all the words. The more words there are for something, the more important it is in human life. If you don't know that, that's the truth. Like Eskimos have like so many words for snow. It's important. We have a bunch of words for sex. We have a bunch of words for cannabis. Cannabis is hemp. It is the name of the plant. Indica, sativa, hemp, marijuana, all these things. They are ways to describe different parts, but cannabis is the plant's name. I think it's best if we go forward with that. I think, and if it feels luxe and premium and up leveled, great.
Because it is.
I love to be all those things, We do learn that cannabis is hemp and the legal nomenclature that, hemp is anything that contains less than 0.03 milligram, percentage of THC is such just a silly thing. It's just a little human rule that it doesn't really affect the plant. Something that really fascinates me about what I'm doing is that it's old. Like everything I'm doing is the oldest thing in the world. You guys are nodding like you knew. I didn't know. I thought I was cool and modern. Stop.
It's just because I'm a research fanatic. And so, yeah.
So, yeah, gosh darn it. I thought I was so cool and modern.
But you're still teaching us.
I am. And that is cool. And it takes a lot to be a teacher. Don't listen to those people who say that people who can't teach. Well, that's not true at all.
I don't believe it's true either.
It's not. Cannabis is so old, like from the times that we were Pleistocene, you know what I mean? Like Neolithic people, the very first agricultural crop, most historians agree it was probably cannabis because it is so useful from every aspect. The seeds are nutritious. The roots heal our bodies. The stalks give us clothes to wear and shelters we can build shelters out of the fibers. And the flowers, of course, are medicinal and are a drug. We can eat this plant, we can clothe ourselves, and it's just amazing. And it grows really easily. So that is one of the oldest. If you are a gardener, of cannabis, you are one of the oldest kinds of gardeners there are. If you are a person who heals with cannabis, it is one of the oldest, most sacred medicines known to man. Sex, that's pretty old too, guys. And if you don't know that, I know because you do your research, and I'm also into shamanism. I got called a shaman last summer, and I took it very seriously for some reason. I think because I was supposed to, and it led to many hours of instruction. And it just turns out that one of the most famous shamanic practices, shamanic institutes of education is located right by me. What a coincidence. And so now that's a big part of my life. And guess what? One of the oldest known ways to get in touch with spirituality for humans. That's me, your trifecta of everything ancient.
So let's nerd out together a little bit really quickly, because one of the things that I find fascinating, I think this whole episode is fascinating, but one of the things that I find fascinating about cannabis is that we as humans are biologically built to absorb and use all the nutrients and powers that cannabis provides through our little known system as the endocannabinoid system. And I absolutely think that it is the craziest thing that our chromosomes, down to our chemical makeup, is made for cannabis receptors. And so in the most non-technical way, because I try to make sure that we are breaking these things down into layman's terms, give us a little bit of rundown of what that is, and some of the benefits of how our body responds on that molecular level.
You got it. 100%. Here we go. I used to ask people when they say, what do you do? I'm like, I'm a cannabis health coach. And they're like, what's that? And I'm like, I help people, learn how to fit cannabis into their lifestyles to meet their health goals. Oh my God, how does it work? I'm like, well, do you know about your endocannabinoid system? It's called the ECS. This is always a no. No,
I didn't know either.
Yeah. Then I'm like, okay, great. We're going to have a call, like, why don't you call me and we'll tell you all about it. So yeah, we all have an endocannabinoid system, not just humans, every organism, but insects on the planet. So Earth, cannabinoids and the endocannabinoid system, it's practically universal for life here. So with that in mind, we have enzymes that both create and destroy the endocannabinoids that we make inside our body. We have endocannabinoids that our body makes that are supposed to provide this service of communicating with all of our systems, your gut health system, your digestive, your lung and heart system, respiratory, and, brain, all the different systems, reproductive, obviously that's a place where I focus, and musculoskeletal, hunger, and satiety, waking and sleeping. These are all kind of like systems. The communication between these systems is done with endocannabinoids, and our bodies can be supplemented with phytocannabinoids, which work with our receptors like almost exactly the same way. It's like it was designed this way to work together all the time. And when you have good endocannabinoid health, your body has achieved what's called homeostasis, which is balance, just balance between all the systems. You don't have overinflammation over here. You're not experiencing anxiety over there. Maybe your diabetes, honest to God, can be improved because your endocrine function is part of your overall function. Your gut health. So many people with Crohn's, IBS, other issues, are SIBO is something I just learned about, are having incredible results from trying cannabis therapies. And so it's cannabis's ability to work with all of the systems of our body in ways that are completely not known to us, but do work and have worked for humans for all of time. Science is just figuring out what we've already all been doing for millennia. But because of the endocannabinoid system, all of this has been revealed. And the tragedy of this, Michael and Shannon, honestly, is that you know about it. I know about it. Shannon just found out about it. Does your doctor know about it? No, because it wasn't taught in their medical school. Yeah, that's a tragedy.
And I think it goes to the bigger picture too. So when I found this out, and I was talking to a friend about this, they didn't believe me. Because, obviously we have like CBD out there, we have medical marijuana, but the FDA has not approved, cannabis for medical use, with the exception of 2 chemically produced lab-based genetic molecules that they use for medicine. So really the purest form of cannabis is not federally allowed. And obviously we recognize that regardless of where cannabis is legal on a state level, it is not legal on a federal level, which really ties the hands of a lot of research facilities, which ties the hands of a lot of medical boards when you specifically have the FDA, which is kind of like they're the docket. They are the judge, jury, and execution. And so when you have them specifically saying, well, no, we're not going to allow this, it doesn't allow these, doctors that are doing great research to come out and say, hey, marijuana or cannabis or, hemp can be used for things like Alzheimer's, or it could be used for things like weight gain, weight loss, nausea, and the list goes on. It's literally an A through Z list of their uses, because it does make up so much use through everything, like you said, through the nervous system, which is something that I'm actually blown away by. We're starting to see a lot of things like with psilocybin being used for mental health. And I don't think people realize the root of that, like, cannabis actually has fundamental use in the nervous system to where it actually floods your brain like it would dopamine, but in a more of like a healing property. So you're not getting the serotonin, dopamine off balance. You're getting the purest form of what your nervous system is supposed to be doing. It's almost like lubricating the system for you.
Is it now? There? Is it? Yeah. We live for your brain, your That's biggest right. Sexual organ. Where there are more receptors for cannabis chemicals, compounds than any other receptor. There's more receptors for endocannabinoids, which also fit phytocannabinoids from plants in your brain than any other receptor. And yeah, like you said, it does everything in a way that promotes balance in your body. It's safe, shockingly, you know what I mean? And you can't take too much cannabis. You can develop a problem called a cannabis hyperemesis syndrome, where you sort of like can't tolerate any more cannabis, but that's an issue that happens to some people.
You could make the mistake of trying to just do too much at once, and like you're going to have side effects, but it's not going to
kill you.
Right.
You're not going to overdose on it and in the classic way. I do have a psychology degree, and my emphasis was wonderfully, interestingly enough, pharmaceuticals for psychological uses. You know what I mean? Pharmacology. So I have really looked at a lot of drugs in my youth, not, in my studies.
Hey. It's a safe space.
Yeah, right. And it's true. Like all of these, like you mentioned, the psychedelics are on the uprise. We've got so many books and movies and stars and intellectuals coming out for the free use of drugs, basically. And, it's so interesting. Our society now is, how things always swing with the pendulum.
Absolutely.
There was plenty of time in America where all of these drugs were totally legal and society functioned just fine. You know what I mean? And we had all these kinds of rules and different ways about it. You could go to like the apothecary or the pharmacy and get like anything you wanted. Hashish, psychedelics. They just were considered medicines or drugs. And what you did with it was, very in the very most independent and American freedom way, like with your business. But now we've swung the other way. We have a lot of anti-drugs, you know what I mean? And then you can see that the sort of top minds are thinking differently again. We're trying to consider, and especially in psychology with the psychedelics and cannabis and things that you're talking about, there was so much interest in that in the late 60s and 70s at every level in academia and also in research. And those people were very disappointed that got shut down. They were seeing a lot of promise. So I think it's good for everyone, especially after the pandemic and the mental health crises that have ensued. And now what we're needing to do with it, and everybody acknowledging finally and ending the stigma on mental health, for example, too, that these things do need pursuing. That's what the universe has provided here on Earth in terms of plants really is more than 50% of our pharmacopoeia. So let's not ignore that. Let's just be smart and keep going with it. Right. It's only natural.
I think when you avoid the solution that's right in front of you for long enough, people are like, you can't complain that you're not finding the solution when you're staring right at it. I'm of the belief that it's silly to me that, there's a natural plant that grows that has these uses that we are, that it is taboo. And I think that it's, I understand it to a degree, but at the same time, like I also am the type of person that's going to educate myself before coming to an opinion and everything. And when I really went down the rabbit hole, we are fed reefer madness when in all realism, the reasons for cannabis being illegal is because it encroached on so many other economically thriving industries. And so you have these lobbyists and these, the bigwigs that said, well, this one plant can do all these things, or we can have these 10 different, industries. So let's rally together. And so when you start realizing that those are the reasons, it really takes away taboo for me.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah.
And I think it's interesting that I'm bipolar, I'm diabetic, and I suffer from a migraine disorder.
Oh my gosh.
And those are all things that cannabis can help you get over or control, right? You can't get over being bipolar, but it can help you in those regards. But instead, I have to take all this medicine every single day because cannabis isn't legal here in North Carolina. So instead of saying, let's put all these pharmaceutical drugs to the side and let me see what happens when I try cannabis on a regular basis, we can't do that. And I think that a large part of that is big pharma.
Yes. When you point to the money trail, both of you, I'm so grateful for you to bring this up. It's not, it's like part of the advocacy of this work, right? Like Shannon, you are correct in every way that everything you described is part of almost like what is well known to cannabis researchers and doctors as like a sort of a syndrome of common things that are happening when your endocannabinoid system is like underserved. You don't have enough endocannabinoids. You need more. Where could they come from? Oh, I don't know. Cannabis, right? So this is a plug for Americans for Safe Access right here, which is I'm a part of that. Americans for Safe Access is people like me and people like you and maybe who want to have safe access for all Americans in every state. legally and safely. Like, I don't want people's livelihoods to be endangered. I want people to be able to buy, safe, federally regulated cannabis in every state and have the same access. So, that access thing is a big problem. And that's why I'm part of that organization. And then Michael and you guys and Shannon, your points about big pharma or those 10 other industries, I'm so wanting to nerd out on that for just like a minute because I have a huge interest in this. Like my interest in the industry of cannabis, maybe it's because I'm in Northern California and maybe it's because I'm a huge cannabis nerd, whatever. But for example, this is one I think is really great. You can watch a YouTube video about a guy now who's farming cannabis and pork. Okay. And his cannabis feeds his pork, and his pigs are so healthy. They don't take any antibiotics. They don't take anything. They don't take any supplements whatsoever. You know what I mean? They are ridiculously healthy. And, he slaughters them and sells their meat and people love it. And it's wonderful. And he's like, this is a wonderful way to farm. I'm not a pot farmer. I'm a farmer. I don't want to be, you know what I mean? This is the way it should be. In the feed industry, the animal feed industry, before cannabis prohibition, we were growing hemp and cannabis constantly, all the time. It was totally encroaching on the biodiesel industry. Ford made an all hemp car that was powered by biodiesel grown hemp. You know what I mean? Like, so the whole situation, like back in whatever time, like I was blown away by that. There are people right now lobbying for poultry to be fed with biomass from the hemp industry, which needs to be lobbied because apparently when we got rid of the legality of cannabis everywhere, we got even rid of that. So what that tells me is that back in the day, all of our livestock were even fed with cannabis. And we know now they all have endocannabinoid systems. And we know now that cannabis supports their health. So we know now that people from the past were eating healthier meat than we are now today. What? Because of cannabis? Like, we can connect all of that together. Super nerdy, but I love it. And I wish the poultry industry and all of the livestock industries all the best, because that would be a marriage of industry to have the hemp, the farmers of hemp, able to provide, that to be able to get rid of their biomass to that other industry and make our meat healthier. Yeah. It just all goes together.
Have you ever seen the documentary Food Inc.?
Oh yeah.
and they show like,
I just like those things are so depressing, but also great.
Corn and grass are not supposed to be processed by a cow.
I know, right? And that's all they eat,
right?
Like,
yeah, no.
I have a question. I have a question for you, Michelle.
Yeah.
Does the actual growing of cannabis, is that healthier for the soil?
Shannon, this is such a good question. Yes. Cannabis is so good for improving soil health. It is literally what's called a bioaccumulator. You can plant cannabis in like nuclear reactor sites like Chernobyl and clean them up, literally. But this is also a problem for why our cannabis market is unregulated, since it is a bioaccumulator and can provide that improvement to the soil by pulling out pollutants. Then the plant itself holds the pollutants. So now we should not consume this plant. This plant is polluted now. Is the person that you're buying cannabis CBD from online for sure not getting polluted cannabis? This is the question that every consumer needs to ask themselves. This is why education is necessary.
Wow. Very interesting. Very interesting, because I just wondered when you said that there are these cannabis gardeners, is there a natural reason why it's so beneficial, not just to us, not just to animals, but the earth as well?
To the earth as well. Yeah, it is. It's a plant and it does its thing. It does the same thing all the other plants do in terms of CO2. And at land, it gives us all these benefits: the roots, the stalks, the flowers, the fact that the seeds, they're all edible. They're all either medically beneficial or, recreationally, or for fiber or for biodiesel, plastic. You can make everything out of hemp. The reason why all those industries, Michael, were so against hemp, paper, wood, you name it, was because it's a legit competitor. It can replace all those things, plastic. You know what I mean? It's crazy.
And I think it adds to the conversation that we are having / should be having now is, if we're talking about alternative energy sources, again, it's the solutions in your face. Like, you can literally burn off hemp at a much healthier way. than some of the fossil fuels that we're relying on. But that's a whole nother diatribe to go down.
There's even this thing about bees, and bees, you know, how we really need bees. Like bees are important to our entire food chain. And apparently they love cannabis, even though insects don't have an endocannabinoid system. That one organism on earth that doesn't have it, they love it. They love it so much. And then, so you get healthier bees, even you get healthier soil, you get healthier humans, you get healthier other organisms. You know, let's forget about race. Let's forget about money for a second. And let's just try to like live our best lives here on earth, you know, making ourselves and everything around us and the earth itself even healthier. What a goal, huh?
I'm here for that.
Think big.
So let's
think big, act small.
Let's take a second real quick to, one of the things that I think is kind of interesting is, so you're not a big fan of like smoking the flower version of like marijuana specifically.
Me
right?
personally, I'm into, for inhalation, I advocate dry herb vaporizing. That is a way to use the flower to inhale. I'm a big proponent of inhaled medicine, but I like dry herb vaporizing it. It's the most natural way, and it's also the most bioavailable way, which what that means is that you get the actual most medicine that way. The only other way that's more is through topical patches, which are very complicated. It's like that's a really complicated way to get your cannabis.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I'm not a big smoker, but it is part of the culture. So I acknowledge it, and I don't disrespect people who do smoke. I just have my own reasons. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I think that that's like the majority of people's like introduction.
It is
to care, and for the sake of it, for the introduction of marijuana, you know, although I think edibles are more on the rise.
That's what I was going to say. The other thing is, you know, your gummy or your brownie. You know what I mean? Or your experience at a party with a gummy or a brownie.
I don't even know if I want to go to those parties anymore. Yeah, edibles again, unregulated edibles are like the worst edibles.
They are.
You know, the batch that your friend's cousin made that you don't know quite much about. Yeah, those will throw you for a loop and certainly make you never want to look at cannabis again for a while. But yeah, let's just kind of talk through some of the misconceptions of cannabis coaching. I think, you know, like the first that comes to mind is like, you know, you're advocating, you know, that everyone should go be a pothead, right? Like,
oh, you know, I'm not going to say right. You know, you can't trick me, Michael. Thanks. I am not advocating that everyone become a pothead. It's so funny. The biggest question is like, Michelle, I have this problem. Can cannabis help me? Like I always say yes. You know, when I got into this, I was so excited because I knew my trust in this plant was so strong. I've already been through everything with this plant. It has helped my sex life, my urinary health. I had a baby between 2015 and now, and I used cannabis through my pregnancy to help with my nausea. And I used to get gestational diabetes, Shannon, to your point, and my numbers were perfect this time. I was in my 20s when I had my other two kids, and I'm 43 when I had this last kid. And all my numbers were better. All my endocrine numbers were better. All my iron numbers were better. I was able to eat better. I was able to not be nauseated and throw up every day. I was able to sleep every night. You know what that does for you? It gives you a healthy pregnancy. You know, like if I wasn't so confident that cannabis could help me and that women over the millennia have been using it, even though it's prohibited now, I don't think I would have had the confidence or the ability to enact all that for myself. Yeah, I think that the biggest problems with cannabis are that people have no idea how else to use it besides smoking and maybe eating a brownie. I do teach a class on how to make tinctures. So tinctures are cannabis that you take orally. You can also take cannabis like sublingually. So anytime you put it in your mouth and you swallow it, that's an edible, that's ingestion. If you put it in your mouth and just let it soak into your mucosal membranes of your mouth, that's called sublingual, under your tongue. And you could spit it out afterward because it can actually get into your bloodstream from that way. You might have taken a pill this way before or been given a lozenge by maybe a doctor that had medicine in it. So this is common. Another way is topically. We can rub it on our skin. And that also includes things like weed lube is considered a topical. But think about it, like our rectal and vaginal tissues are very like our mouth mucosa. They are able to absorb into our bloodstream. So you can use suppositories, which I'm a huge advocate for suppositories, mostly vaginal suppositories, but of course rectal as well. People use these a lot to get cannabis into their bloodstreams without going through the GI tract, because that can be a problem with certain illnesses. And all of these things, these are the know-how. These are the technical aspects. Cannabis is an incredibly versatile medicine that we can take all these ways safely. Inhaled, ingested, sublingually, topically. These are all safe ways to take this one thing. Not every medicine has all those routes of ingestion. It's amazing. So the sort of engineering of my job is to take people, what they really want, what health goal they're trying to achieve, and what their life is supposed to be like when that health goal is achieved, and then use cannabis in a way to get them there. So for example, my big advocacy of vaginal suppositories, this is just a way to help women with terrible menstruation cramps or menopause symptoms, or maybe even like sometimes fibromyalgia issues, endometriosis issues, to get more control, have a tool in their toolbox to relieve them of pain, decrease anxiety, and release pelvic tension that can help them do all kinds of things. You just might want to get rid of pain. You might want better sleep. You might want better sex. You might just need to like get through your period without turning into a crazy person. These are all things that I've helped other women do with ingested cannabis and cannabis suppositories. And so that's a totally different thing than smoking. Totally. You would never be able to address all that with smoking, like, and especially not at those locations. I have firm belief that it's about getting the cannabis to the place where you need it to do its job, your brain, your body, your reproductive system, your toe, whatever, put it there, rub it on. I'm like that big fat Greek wedding dad, like rub it on there, put it on everything. And then what cannabinoids to take. And that kind of has to do with when there are hundreds of cannabinoids, THC, CBD, those are just two. They are major ones, but there are so many more. Our cannabis, the reason why THC is just such a big deal is because it's just been underground bred. It's not ever been through any modern breeding processes. And all that the underground market has ever cared about is getting high in THC. So we have a ton of THC, mostly in the marijuana market, right? And now we need to breed the plants for all these other cannabinoids. It's just a matter of time and getting the genetics right. But every cannabinoid you've heard of, Delta 8, Delta 9, Delta 10, CBD, CBDV, THC, THCV, they're all in a family. They're all related. They're all found in cannabis in tiny amounts. And the thing is, we've just bred for CBD, THC, and mostly THC, and now CBG too. So understanding all of these things about cannabis, that it's safe, all the ingestion routes and all the cannabinoids is all you need to do to be able to design a program to make yourself healthy or another person with cannabis. And that's kind of my job. You can see why it's simple and yet also complicated, right?
So I'm fascinated by like cannabis culture. I think that that's something that I've always been fascinated by, because I think that it is, if we look historically, like what we associate with versus what, like we know now, right? Like it's almost like these parallel lines, like in the 60s, there was certainly like the hippie movement that was very associated, and then the flower child. And then you move forward to the late 60s, early 70s, and you like spotlight an area like Mendocino County, where, the war on drugs, is really taken over with, with camp, like, the camp movement, where they literally moved in and shipped them out, on the backdrop of like the Vietnam War. And then we had the resurrection of like the new age hippie movement. And then into the 80s, 90s, where it became more of like a social, like, staple, in like hip hop and rock culture. And then through the modern day, it's become the advent of medicinal, holding hands with recreational. And then I think now we're starting to see recreational take that forefront again, with the understanding that you have soccer moms and you have, the people that are going from, yoga right to their head shop, or, it's not just the dad sitting upstairs, playing his old record, sneaking a joint while his kids are in the garage sneaking a joint. It's not that way anymore, right? But I paint that picture to say, like, do you think that pop culture's association with cannabis is a benefit, or does it deter from the work that you're trying to do?
I'm going to say all PR is good PR for that, just as a general summary. I had a lot of years in marketing and creative work, and I'm just going to be like, getting the word out in general. And, the service that celebrities are doing by living cannabis lifestyles, even if it's just recreational, is showing people that you can. I mean, these are hardworking people with the highest echelons of pressure on their jobs. You know what I mean? And turning to cannabis is pretty interesting. And also creatives. These are creatives.
Oh,
people who are respected for their creativity at the highest level. I think that all of that needs to go together, and we need to understand, what is Snoop Dogg and Casa Verde doing? On the one hand, he's hanging out with Martha Stewart and making cannabis like natural and normal. And at the same time, he's investing in it in other countries. And at the same time, he's creating businesses here. He's a mogul, right? He's not just a rapper who smokes weed. Have you seen the movie The Grass is Greener on Netflix? It's amazing to talk about how racist the propaganda was against jazz people who were the most popular musicians in our country at that time, and using cannabis, lifestyles as a tool of incarceration. And we all know this. This is not new, but let's talk about it for just a second.
Absolutely.
Alcohol prohibition going out the window left a huge amount of government services with nothing to do. And the influx of Mexicans and, into our country at that time was something that was people were frowning upon. That's where the word marijuana comes from. And, our ongoing struggles as a country with race in general between Black and white people, all of that kind of really has a long and storied history with cannabis, because the prohibition is completely aimed at the industrial things you already outlined, these racist propagandas that were promoted, and also filling the gap from alcohol prohibition. So now that needs to all be repealed and fixed. Let's get started.
Yeah. I think it's certainly like a rabbit hole people need to go down, honestly, because I think that, and this is the way I think about anything. I cannot give my opinion unless I have a foundation of understanding. Otherwise it's just a thought. I'm hitching my thought to another bandwagon, and time and place for that, right? But if I want to have a conversation that I'm going to have validity behind, then I want to learn more. And it's certainly a very curious rabbit hole to go down. But I'm the type of person that, if I start looking at something and, especially when we have fascinating guests on, I want to be able to make sure that I'm able to have conversation. And so, going down the rabbit hole of a couple of documentaries and reading a couple of books or getting a little bit of more information only adds to our ability to have a conversation that is, fact-based, which I think people can appreciate, because, if we were just both sitting here talking about our opinions about how awesome cannabis was, there wouldn't be as much validity, right? But there's a lot of intention behind the fact that even me, who's, trying to have the conversation, Shannon, who's trying to have the conversation with somebody who's an expert, making sure that we are bringing some thought to the conversation that is fact-based, especially with topics like this that is considered so taboo, because it'd be so easy for me to joke and laugh about, being this huge Snoop Dogg fan and having some wild Snoop Dogg stories on the parallel to being able to say, like you said, well, what is he doing for the culture? What is he doing for the understanding and how that conversation is getting started to begin with? That's the important conversations that we should be having that, unfortunately, I don't think many people do. I think people leave it at, oh yeah, I've listened to the Chronic album once, smoke weed every day. And that's where they leave it.
Yeah. I'm grateful to Cannabis Culture, obviously, for bringing things into the light. I'm excited to be part of it. I want to put my own stamp on it. For example, let's talk about Asian Americans in cannabis.
That's
crickets, right? Yeah. Who you got? Me? Monica Lowe from Seuss Weed. I don't know. You might know about her. She developed a way for people living in apartments to use their sous vide machines to decarboxylate and infuse with cannabis, scent free. Potley is a company out here that is owned by Asian American woman who wanted to help her mom with arthritis and knew that her mom would never eat a gummy, because my mom doesn't eat gummies either. You know what I mean? Brownies and gummies aren't for everybody. Some people, like Asians, like other snacks, for example. So she makes other snacks with her company that are cannabis infused, savory ones, mainly. Honey and I think olive oil infused were her first products. So Asian Americans in the industry is a huge gaping thing that I'm kind of in my business, because you guys are putting forth that effort from North Carolina to to understand more about cannabis, to interview me, I'm so happy and grateful to be a motivating force for that kind of action on your part. Now I know that there are 2 people in your state that know a lot about cannabis, and that makes me happy. In my class, I teach women all over the world, actually, and all over the country, definitely. And one thing that I help them do is to create what I call a ready canna pantry, a canna pantry that allows them to DIY in an instant whatever they want to make. Because when you're me and when you're them, you get the call like, hi, I'm your friend. This happened to me just like a week ago. I'm your friend and from college. And you know what's bad in my life? I just got a breast cancer diagnosis. Hey, I know you're in cannabis. Can you help me? And I'm like, yes, I can. You know why? Because my canna pantry is ready. And I'm completely ready with my kit and with my topicals to send them to you and my suppositories. I know what you need. I've got books. And that empowers me and empowers them. So what I like is knowing that they're in other states and they're in other countries and they know everything I know and they have their canna pantries ready. And I see them as beacons of light all over the map, ready to help their communities, ready to help people in their area. I don't know, just love it.
I love it. I think we could go on for hours and hours about all of this because I think that it is fascinating.
We have to have Michelle back.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Yes. What an honor, really?
Absolutely.
After my first time.
So we are going to put you on the hot seat. These are 3 questions that we ask all of our guests. No pressure. This is, first thing that comes to your mind. So our podcast is all set up about exploring what it means to be a warrior. And I love that we can have conversations like this, and it's still totally within the realm of what it means to be a warrior. But we have these questions that really allow us to kind of turn the table on our guests a little bit so that they can help us with the definition. So our first question is, how do you define what it means to be a warrior?
I believe that being a warrior is being someone who's ready to take action in service of their highest goals. And for me, my highest goals in my business are, like I said, education and empowerment and excellence. I'm trying to help women to be the healers they need to be for their families, themselves. And I'm not even afraid to say the world. Honestly, being a part of cannabis and being a part of health and being a part of spirituality is all about healing everything. And I believe that, and women are a part of that. So when you are a warrior of this, you need to take the actions. And in my class, the biggest thing I see is the lack of confidence. I call it canna confidence. In making something, they're worried about messing up their recipe, about making something too strong or too weak to help their friend or their loved one or themselves. And I need to encourage them to take action. And that's what they're most grateful to me for, is that I was that magical elixir or person, coach, whose belief in their ability and resonance with them allowed them to take the actions that they needed to do to make, take, and share. That's a slogan that comes out of my class, these cannabis tinctures. And that's what I think is the warrior spirit, is like getting up from the failures, pursuing action, making the difference that you want to make. So they're all motivated in their hearts to help with cannabis. And all they need is education and empowerment, a guide to help them figure out what they're going to do to help and get them ready to do it. And then they can just go. And that's where the flow is,
Love that. And I wanted just to say, we are all about people that take the stride to say we want to change the world. We're world changers, and we want to be, we are associating with world changers. So you're in good company for sure.
Thank you.
Our second question is, how have you demonstrated this definition of a warrior in your own life?
Fairly unconsciously, but with more intention nowadays. And that's what I'm grateful to my business for. I am a kind of person with a lot of charisma. Most of my life, I got comments about it. And I am just very attracted to people. Like I said before, I'm very physical and my sexuality is hugely vital. I reach out to people with my womb and I want to heal them. When I see people suffering, the part of me that feels them is not really up in my heart. It's down here and it reaches out and it wants to heal them, like Marvin Gaye and sexual healing. That's sort of what my body feels like to me. So when I think about what does it mean to be a warrior in my own life, it's like to acknowledge that and to not feel bad about it, because I grew up as a Roman Catholic and the conditioning about feeling sexual about people was really harsh, and it took a lot of research and understanding of how other human cultures have maybe been more welcoming to that kind of, eros, ecstasy, love, existence, the way of being that is valuable, femininity and being open and receptive and allowing that power to flow through me is something that I think takes warrior spirit these days. I mean, Shannon, let me know with a nod if you agree that women aren't encouraged to be that way. And it takes like the idea to shake off all that conditioning and to actually take the actions that to allow yourself to be that way, especially, you know, accepting. Oh my gosh, we're all about being rebellious, not accepting. You know what I mean? Like, so finding the strength.
I think there's so much in society that holds women back, and that anything, and Mike and I talk about self-care, self-love, anything that you do for yourself is seen as selfish. And so I think that we as women should be pushing that boundary and saying, this is what I need to care for myself. This is what I need to love myself, and do that without being ashamed.
Thank you. That was perfectly said. I couldn't agree more. So much of my business is about with women and encouraging self-care. If it wasn't for going through my pregnancy as a cannabis advocate and user, like I wouldn't have understood so much this need. When you're growing a person inside of you that you need to be healthy, they need to be healthy. It's all about health. Everything just comes down to these like primal levels. And I poured self-care into myself with bathing, with cannabis, with exercise, with good food. And now I feel very empowered to help other women do the same, and to help just by even saying that you deserve it and you need to run over your cup to help others. We all are so motivated to help others, but when we're running on dry, the ability to help is nothing. You have to help yourself, and then that help can flow out of you. And, you know, understanding that, talking about it, getting the word out, it's just, that's part of my warrior spirit. Like, you guys thought it was such a big deal, you know, to just be brave enough to acknowledge we need self-care in order to care for others. We need to be well-resourced women. Our needs have to be met. It's so hard to say that. You know what I mean? Sometimes I ask my husband, is it weird to be like my husband and everybody knows that I like sex with you with cannabis? And he's like, no. It's not a problem.
Own that shit,
problem.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, he loves it. It's great for a man. It's pretty wonderful. You know what I mean? But for us women, you're right, Shannon. It takes a little bit more bravery. It takes a little bit more warrior spirit to be like, I'm a woman who needs, to be sexually satisfied for my vitality, to be confident, to be able to put myself out there in front of people and help others. Plain as that. I need it.
You're coming up with all sorts of stuff that we could easily do a whole episode on. Like, I'm serious. Like, down to like the Catholic guilt. Like,
overcoming conditioning. It's so hard.
I literally, we could go for an hour and a half on Catholic guilt. Trust me, I'm right there with you. So our third question is: what is one piece of advice that you could give somebody to help them live into your definition of being a warrior?
Take action. Follow your intuition. Is it okay to take two pieces of advice? Because it's hard to take action on nothing. So I'm going to say, as a secondary piece of advice, try to get in tune with your intuition and then take action on what you feel. I don't think there's any other way to live a fulfilled life. What do you guys think?
No, I completely agree. I put my notion behind our purpose being service to others. Oftentimes what we are looking for, though, is the tool and instrument. You know, if we can agree that our why is service to others, then what we're really stumbling around trying to find is how we serve others. And so we mistake that for whatever, lane that we're pushed in, somewhere in our lives, whether it's by a parent or a teacher or somebody that said, you should do this, versus listening to ourselves and saying, but really what I want to do is this. And so over time it diminishes until we just either conform, we die, or we say, fuck it, I'm a rebel. I'm doing it my own way.
I can't take it anymore.
Traveled. Yeah.
Can't take it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. That's a lot what you're speaking of. It's like, speak with that true intention for sure.
I always feel like, if you're asking me, sometimes I meet people and all I ever want to say to them is like, cannabis is good for you. Just if I have, if I wanted to just give you a great tip, cannabis is good for you. Try it. You know what I mean? Call me if you need it. Watch my YouTube channel.
So but like, how do you plan on spending this 420?
You know what? I am scheduled at this point my career in cannabis has taken off to such an awesome degree. I can't even tell you how rad it is. Like last year at 420, I made a video in my kitchen of my favorite cannabis gadgets, the Ardent FX, the Source Turbo, and 3 vaporizers. 4 actually. And I'm coming up on 420 now. I will be probably doing a webinar with a company for whom I'm a spokesperson. I have made several videos and work as a marketing consultant for Extract Craft, a company that makes alcohol recovery botanical extraction machines. I hope that made sense to the listeners. You can make concentrates of any botanical, like lavender, like cannabis, like hemp, and I do. And I got on the radar of that company, and then they hired me, and it's amazing for my business. And I'm enjoying it so much. So I'll be doing like a webinar with them, Q&A for the Extract Craft audience with their customer service guy, Dylan. And we'll be just like being helpful and starting off like a recipe contest, I think, for them. But also, I'll be gardening. It's time to start a garden here in Northern California. So I'll be doing that for 420.
Very nice. Very nice. So is there anything that you want to share that you didn't get to say today? One of the things that I talk about a lot is, like the hindsight of 2020 being that, we'll be off this call and you'll be like, man, I wish I would have said that. And so we'll save it for the next time we have you on. But is there something that you wanted to talk about today that we maybe didn't get to that really helps sum up or, is a point that needs to be made?
The point that needs to be made, honestly, like as a businesswoman, and you guys have to agree with this. Like, and I've been working on this. I'm grateful for the work as a spokesperson because it's brought this more to the front. Like, I do need to tell you, hi, I'm Michelle Crawford, a certified cannabis health coach. I know you're going to have my details, but hey, check me out on www.Canna-Curiouscoaching.com, where you'll find my blog. And soon I will be putting up a resources guide to my affiliate links. If you want to learn how to make vaginal suppositories, I have a free guide you can get from my website. And I'm coming out with classes to help DIYers learn which machines to buy and also how to use them. And of course, there's my tinctures class, which I'll be giving again for the second time to, great demand, how to make a Canna kit, which is a set of tinctures that helps you get through the day and night. And it's this system that I've perfected with my family over the past few years, teaching to people now. And it really helps them because not only does it give them the ability to make medicine for themselves cheaply at home, for their entire, routine, but they can also give that to their friends and family. And it's a wonderful system that really helps people get the most out of cannabis in their own way, because everyone's unique. And so you can't just give everybody like one thing. So to answer your question, it's just like I should talk about my business a little bit more, what I'm doing, exactly how I help people. I offer one-on-one coaching. I'm starting up a club. Some of this stuff is in the works because I've only been in business for like 6 months, you guys, but it's so exciting. I'm doing so great, I think. And there's just so promising. The whole industry is amazing. And I love my customers so much. We're opening up a merch shop pretty soon. And there's just so much. Exciting classes and clubs and free things you can get from my website. And I'm just about to start doing a lot more review type blog posts and videos. The big difference between my business last 420 and this 420 that I didn't quite circle around to saying was that I could do that exact same video, except for, you know what? I'm so proud to say this. I have negotiated affiliate relationships with like everything that was on that table. So talk about walking the talk. Like, I care about those products. I love them. And I love the vendors that sold me those products. And I'd recommend them to everyone. And now today, because I'm a business and not just a consumer, I created affiliate relationships with all of those people so I can tell you about them and also give you a deal and support the whole commerce cycle. Right. So that's a big difference between last year and this year absolutely. For me.
And I love that. And I don't think enough people realize like the power of like, you don't always have to go create the next iteration of your business. You find people you can collaborate like these big businesses that you can, a product store might not be in your wheelhouse, but you can say, hey, this is a product I recommend and still make money off of it. Like that's, I've made a nice little side hustle by getting affiliates and sponsorships through a lot of my content and working with, businesses that otherwise I wouldn't have been able to just walk up to and say, hey, you want to work on some marketing? No. And I think that you're absolutely right. It's the difference between going from consumer to a business mind. And you did take the words out of my mouth because it's my next question was, where can people find you? So drop your social media handles, all of that. We're going to, of course, have all this stuff in the descriptions, but, just let them know, like, if they are by their phone right now, how they can look you up on Instagram, YouTube, wherever you're online on social media.
Oh, yeah. You can find me. My website is www.Canna-Curiouscoaching.com. My IG is michellcrawford.Canna-Curious. You can find me on YouTube. YouTube is probably my favorite. I just look myself up by looking at Michelle Crawford Cannabis, because cannabis is my favorite word and Michelle Crawford's my name.
Awesome. All right. And it was a pleasure to have you on today. Like I said, we will definitely continue this conversation. I think that there's a lot to be learned from people exploring their processes of understanding more about, the benefits of cannabis. And so if you are curious about how cannabis can be good for you, make sure that you do visit Canna-Curious.com, and Michelle will be happy to help you become more Canna-Curious.
That's right.
Hey Warriors, it's Michael, and I want to thank you for listening to the Warrior of Impact podcast. Make sure that you subscribe to us on your favorite streaming platforms and leave us a 5-star review. For more information, check out warriorofimpact.com.